Hello and welcome to Innobit's Enterprise Mobility Suite presentation, or EMS, which is an exciting and relatively new offering from Microsoft designed to support the new and ever-changing world of mobile workplaces. My name is Nigel Finn, and my job is normally to provide Innobit's clients with device management solutions, but today I'm taking a little time out to share some knowledge, so let's get started. The main goal of this presentation is to give you a good high-level understanding of EMS and also to show you how the components hang together. Now, we won't go into any of the practical aspects of configuring or implementing EMS. Microsoft have actually already done that and made their videos freely available through the Microsoft Virtual Academy. So what I'll do is at the end of this presentation, I'll publish those links and you can go and check those out for yourself. On the agenda today, we're going to look at what EMS offers, and then we're going to get into why we use EMS and how it fits in the enterprise environment. Following that, we're going to have a much more in-depth look at the products that EMS is composed of, which include Intune, Azula Premium, and Rights Management Service, or RMS. And finally, we're going to have a quick look at the basic costs for EMS, which are certainly not as expensive as what most people would think, very competitively priced, and definitely a lot cheaper than buying the constituent products all separately. Jumping straight into what EMS offers, as I mentioned, EMS is actually composed of three separate products that Microsoft have smashed together into one single offering. Looking first now at Azula Premium, which is the hybrid identity management component of EMS. Now, Azula AD is really a must-have if you want to simplify the process of authenticating users to your online internet-based applications. But what's cool about the premium version is that it provides some additional authentication mechanisms, as well as some nice little self-service tools for end users that really simplify the life of administrators and remove some of those monotonous or more mundane tasks. So with AD Premium, we get self-service password reset, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication options, and sync capabilities across cloud and on-premise directories. Moving on to Windows Intune, this is really at the heart of your mobile device management strategy. What it does is it allows you to manage the configurations and applications of your devices over the internet. Again, there are some more details to follow a little bit later on, but just as a quick overview, what you'll get with Windows Intune is mobile application management, compliancy management, selective data wipe, and some nice little features that allow you to separate the strategies you use to manage BYOD versus corporate devices. And last but not least, we have Azure Rights Management, or RMS, for information protection. RMS is designed to make sure that content such as documents or spreadsheets, or even things like CAD drawings, are protected no matter where they go, whether they're in transit or at rest. RMS supports access restrictions, usage restriction, encryption options, and native Office 365 integration. And looking now at the sum total of the parts, what EMS enables is the following: authentication to online services through federated services and single sign-on, or SSO, control over content, and seamless access to services from any device type. And there on the right hand side you have four very good cloud-based services, my personal favorites, all of which benefit greatly from EMS, but certainly are not the limited range of what EMS supports. Now, moving right along, we're going to look at why we use EMS, and one of the best reasons I can think of is security, because devices go everywhere. Now, this might kind of seem obvious to most people, but it's actually something that's really been changing in more recent years, at least in terms of the level of mobility we enjoy. And the main driver of that change has been the advent of smartphones. Now, even when we compare them to things like laptops, smartphones have really been a ubiquitous force. They go on holidays, they come to the toilet, and they're the last thing we look at before we go to sleep at night. So in extending that thought, we have to consider the fact that devices can really be lost just about anywhere we can imagine on Earth. And of course, because of their value and size, they're actually a very big target for theft as well. So as an IT administrator, I have to consider the possibility that when the device is not in the hands of its owner, then it's potentially in the hands of the most wrong people possible. And in this scenario, I can't just cross my fingers and hope that everything will work out. I need to have a strategy in place for protecting that device from being compromised. And that's what EMS offers, a lot of options for doing just that. So what are the important questions to ask in relation to device security? Well, one of the first is going to be, what information are users carrying around. Now, from my experience, I can say that when devices are being used for work purposes, then the chances are that they have some information which is of interest to outside parties. So what's really important to then ask is how well that information is protected. For example, does it even have a PIN? Additional to that, what might be important to ask is how complex that PIN is. So perhaps it's not enough to protect the data with just 4 numbers. What we want to see is that the users have both a combination of letters and numbers in order to access the device. Next, we might want to ask, what networks do the users connect their devices to? Certainly more open networks, such as those found at airports or at coffee shops, are a little bit more vulnerable to things such as snooping. So in addition to taking standard in-transit security measures like ensuring that corporate services are only accessible over SSL, we might want to also take the additional step of ensuring that the content itself is encrypted at rest. So using RMS in this scenario really helps. Are users uploading to untrusted storage, such as Dropbox, is the next very good question. Now don't get me wrong, corporate cloud storage services are a great productivity booster and really make it a lot easier for users to access the same content across multiple devices. But do note the key phrase I used there, corporate cloud storage services. Now this differs from personal cloud storage, the main difference being that when an employee uploads corporate content to their personal space, the business really has no control over that content anymore. They can't exercise any rights over it. So if an employee shows very poor judgment and uploads confidential business data to their storage space, it can be very difficult to claw that back. Moreover, it can be difficult to even know about it in the first place. What makes matters worse is that when users share this content out, it's usually via public links, which means that it's open to anyone to look at if they know the URL. So allowing personal cloud storage, a very risky strategy indeed. But as I say, corporate level cloud storage services such as Business OneDrive, I'm a big fan, I highly recommend them, and they really give the business the ultimate control over their content. Again, I will mention that using services such as RMS can also really help out with this because the data is encrypted at rest and requires the correct credentials in order to access it regardless of where it's stored. And moving on now, what device versions are out there is a really good question. Older versions of operating systems do tend to come with inherent vulnerabilities. For example, a little while back, iOS was suffering from an SSL authentication issue, so knowing the device versions can really help shore up your security because you can take some remedial steps against them. And the really cool thing about Intune, especially SCCM managed Intune, is that you get some very nice reports that you can have automatically sent out in relation to these device versions, and also you can automate the remediation of them. Very cool stuff. And the final question to ask, are there jailbroken devices within the environment? Now this is a really key question because basically the process of jailbreaking gives users root access to their device, and it's with those elevated rights the malicious software can install itself. Again, SCCM managed Intune can be really helpful in identifying and remediating such devices. Now continuing the theme of why we use EMS, the next good reason is convenience, because users go everywhere. And looking at the benefits of EMS and mobility solutions in general, one big thing is that they are cost effective. Certainly in environments where not all employees require access to full-blown content creation or office software, it can mean that less full PCs are required. Take for example, businesses where users are mostly tradespeople who only need access to such things as email and intranet. In such a case, it might be cheaper and simpler for employees to use mobile devices rather than more expensive laptops. And if we go for a BYOD policy, there's probably even more to save there. Now I mentioned here that there is also less downtime, and I don't mean technical downtime, but rather user downtime. Mobile solutions really help make what is traditionally dead time more effective work time. So for example, if an employee has to travel as part of their job and they have support from their mobile solutions, then there's really an opportunity for them to get some work done, which would otherwise be spent doing things such as waiting around in airport lounges. The next benefit goes without saying, it allows for quicker response times simply because the user has their mobile office with them at all times. And one of the more underrated benefits of mobility solutions is that they can really help improve morale among users. because they offer a lot of options for that work and personal life balance that just about everyone is looking for. And finally, when businesses orient themselves around mobility, it drives self-service strategies. It's important to keep in mind that mobility isn't just about accessing corporate resources anywhere, it's about doing it anytime as well. So having things like self-service password reset and automated service requests can really help unchain users from traditional service desk support models. And at the end of the day, self-service really translates into user efficiency and independence, which has a lot of financial benefits in and of itself. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Windows Intune now. Windows Intune is a cloud-based service which extends management capabilities to mobile devices and non-Windows systems. Intune runs independently, or its services can be leveraged by SCCM. Before we get into Intune's features, let's look at what devices are supported by it. First, there are Apple computers, so OS X. Then there are phones and tablets, meaning iOS. Now, in the past, people have said to me, Intune managed Apple devices, it's probably not going to be so good, given that Microsoft have their own interests in their own platform. However, one thing I can say is that Microsoft have really taken great strides in ensuring that iOS is perhaps the most fully supported platform they have, or at least as well supported as Windows platforms. To be honest, I really feel that Intune has overtaken its competitors and is what I feel is now the market leader in terms of supported functionality. So definitely something worth considering there. Next on the list are Android phones and tablets, followed by Windows computers, phones, and RT tablets. Unfortunately, for those who use BlackBerry, it is not supported by Intune. Moving on to the features that Intune supports. There is a whole list of them. Pointing out one of the key features there, certificates are a really handy thing to be able to manage on devices. Usually there are no other good methods for getting certificates automatically on devices. Of course, on top of that, you have Wi-Fi management, so if your Wi-Fi connection has special passwords and things like that, it can be automatically configured. On top of other things like device restrictions and store access, encryption, security, roaming, email management. There's quite a lot there, and you can read that for yourself, I'm sure. But looking at a high level across all the devices, one thing I want to point out is that not all the features are supported across all the devices. Generally speaking, iOS and Windows platforms support the most features, and having a quick look at the big ones on the list, we have settings management, device wipe, pull software distribution, push software distribution, and selective wipe. Now, drawing your attention to something at the bottom of the list there, selective wipe. This is one of the new features that has been more recently implemented in the last 12 months, I believe, and is really one of the cool things that allows us to distinguish between BYOD and corporate devices. So basically, if a user is working with corporate data on a personal device, for example, we no longer have to wipe the device in order to ensure that the content has been removed from the device. We can actually just selectively wipe all the corporate content, and those selective features will be based on what has been configured through Intune. Now, one of the cool things about Intune is that it can be configured so that it is managed from SCCM, or System Center Configuration Manager. For those of you who are already familiar with SCCM, you'll know it's a very powerful tool for managing computers in your environment. And what's nice is that it is supported by query-based collection management, which allows you to automatically distinguish devices based on any number of arbitrary criteria. What it means is that we can treat devices based on a particular feature or aspect of that device. Say, for example, the version of the operating system it uses, or perhaps whether it's a corporate or personal device. Also, what's nice with SCCM is that a lot of the features that are able to be supported are made available first through SCCM and then a little bit later through the Intune web interface. So by using SCCM, you get new features a little bit quicker. On top of that, additional configurations can be accessed by importing OMA files or Open Mobile Alliance configurations. But getting back to the main theme of this slide, the main point is to show you how Intune integrates with SCCM or vice versa. I'm not sure which way to put that. But first off, we start with the administrator who accesses the single admin console or the SCCM console. And that's just something, again, to highlight. The SCCM console becomes your one pane of glass in which to manage your entire estate. Very nice in comparison to other solutions where you might have to log into 2 or 3 interfaces in order to complete the picture. So normally what happens is when a computer is managed by SCCM, it retrieves policy from the server which says how it should be configured. With mobile devices, this process is a little bit different as they spend 99% of their lives on the internet and rarely connect to the corporate network in the same way as traditional PCs, if ever. So as you might have already guessed, this is where Intune comes in. It mediates the relationship with the devices and allows the benefits of cloud-based services to take over. And one thing to be aware of with this diagram, it kind of looks like Windows Intune talks directly to devices, but actually in many cases that's not really how it is. What happens is typically Windows Intune will talk to another server. For example, with iOS, it will talk to Apple push notification servers, and that's how the content or the device settings will be pushed upon it. So there's really quite a surprising amount of infrastructure behind all this. Let's get into the advantages of SCCM integration now. Well, as I mentioned, one of the big things is that the console offers you a single pane of glass to manage all device types and deployments. This is great because it really simplifies the process of managing all device types across the entire estate, and certainly allows for the unification of processes and overall reduces the amount of learning involved. Now the next big one on the list is query-based management of devices. Now if any of you have ever used SCCM before, you'll know how powerful a tool this is. What it allows you to do is group devices together into collections based on some arbitrary criteria. For example, the model name. In turn, administrators are then able to target specific application deployments or configurations to those devices. And what's nice is that the collections are updated on a periodic basis if so defined. This gives you a lot of options for automatically and dynamically managing your environment. And next is better PowerShell management options for additional automation. And I won't go into the details of how great PowerShell is, but if you're familiar with it, you'll know how great a benefit that is. Next is better reporting and hardware inventory options. So what will happen is that SCCM will collect all the device data, centralize it, and present it to you through SQL Server reporting services. And something cool that comes with that is the ability to receive reports automatically via email. And the final advantage is a wider set of features available, which are more rapidly updated. Basically, it's the case that SCCM will receive a lot of new features before they make it into the Intune management portal. Okay, we're going to have a look at Azula Premium now, and the burning question is probably, what does it do for us? Well, it supports authentication across a wide variety of online applications, as well as additional authentication options. Keep in mind that there are different versions of Azula AD, and the premium version is the most fully featured that you get. What comes with the premium version, you ask? First off, you get company branding, which gives users the feeling that they're logging on to corporate or business resources. Next up is group-based application access for granting rights in bulk. Following that is self-service password reset for users to be able to reset their own passwords without administrator intervention. And what's nice about this is that it is protected by a captcha, so it's not easily exploitable by bots. Then there's self-service group management, so that users within an organization can assign group memberships themselves. There's some advanced security reporting and alerts available. And one of the coolest things, multi-factor authentication, so users will also need to use an SMS code they receive at the time of logon in order to authenticate. And finally, there's identity provider-based authentication available. Now, taking the example of a marketing department, what typically happens right now is that all the employees within that department share the same username and password to all the social media accounts. Now, that really makes it very difficult to control who has access to those accounts. And certainly, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to know if the people accessing those accounts are authorized to do so. So Azula Premium provides an authentication platform to those services. But what that means is that if a user from the marketing department resigns, you can then disable their account and they no longer have access to those online services. Honestly, given the importance of online services to businesses these days, this is really an essential security feature to have. We're going to get into Azure RMS now. Let's have a look at how document rights management typically works. Firstly, a user creates a document. Next, the document is uploaded to a restricted location or share. Finally, users with the permissions to access the folder are given access to the document by virtue of those permissions. Sounds good? Well, there are a number of problems with it. The big thing is that when documents are downloaded to a local device or emailed, the permissions required to access the document no longer apply. Even if an open password is set on the document, that password has to be stored and securely communicated in order for others to use it. One can imagine that 3 or 4 years down the track, that password is long gone. The next problem is the granular control of access permissions is not really a practical thing. So folder permissions are often too broad, and many users who have access to that share, for example, may not really be entitled to look at those documents. And finally, there's no ability to control whether a document is emailed or printed. So how does RMS solve this problem? Well, first, it offers document encryption by default. It gives the author control over what other users can and cannot do with that document. It requires user account-based authentication in order to ensure the correct access. It offers now protection for non-Office files. In the past, that was a problem, but now it's the case that you can actually protect your PDFs and CAD drawings as well as your standard Office documents. So it's not really limited anymore. And finally, you get transaction logging options for forensic analysis. So just looking at how that works, basically the author will set the permissions on the document and it will be encrypted with an RMS key. The author will then send that document onto a recipient, and when the recipient opens that document, they will be authenticated through the RMS service through Azure Active Directory. Once they have been authenticated, they will then receive the decryption key and be able to view the document. Now, if you send these documents to external users who aren't in your domain, it's not really a problem. All you have to do is send them the link so that they can sign up for RMS, which is a free service and allows them to decrypt or even create their own RMS protected documents. Well, we're getting towards the end, so what are the costs for EMS? Well, at the time of making this presentation, Azure AD Premium was $6, Azure Rights Management $2, and Windows Intune is $4. Purchased separately, that gives you $12. EMS as a whole is $750 for the lot, which is a saving of $450 per license. And each license, of course, is per user based. And do keep that in mind, it's not a per device license, it's a per user license. So quite a bit cheaper than some other alternatives available today. I guess that's where I wrap things up now, so I just want to say thank you for watching and I hope that you'll be joining us again one day soon. Before we finish the presentation, I'll make the links available for those who are interested. As promised, it covers off the topics related to EMS training and practical implementation steps.